Fuck. Dude. Every day, old beautiful beasts like this Pentium 4 here are left to the wayside. They go unused and unloved. When 9 times out of 10, they are more than capable of carrying on. They still have plenty of life left in them. So what should we do about that? How about we learn how to make little effective media and file servers? How are we going to turn an old shitty desktop into a server? Don't you need Xeon for that? And I mean, anything can be a server with the right software and a computer to utilize it. Now, I am using a Pentium 4. It's not the best thing, but for a basic file server and media server, it does the job. Most of the time, people think they're slow, but generally that's a bottleneck on the hard drive side of things. Most of these computers are probably managed fine for them everyday tasks if they just add a bit of storage, or maybe they just manage the storage better so that the hard drive didn't take as much of a performance hit. But we can use that to our advantage. It's a lot of fun to do something like this. Getting old hardware and making it work, especially if it's broken, can be really rewarding. A lot of the times these go unused and they're perfectly good PCs, you don't want to waste them. It's also a great learning platform if you're stuck on Windows but you want to start learning Linux. That's what we're going to be running on this. I think it's an even better way to learn Linux than just installing it on your desktop. So grab yourself a drink and enjoy the video. Buckle up, motherfuckers, we're getting to the meat of the video now. So now that you've decided that you want to turn an old desktop into a server, the first thing you're going to have to do is source yourself some hardware. So one of the easiest ways to do this is to just go knocking around your neighborhood and just ask your neighbors if they have any old computers they want to get rid of. Often people keep them around because generally it's frowned upon to just throw this stuff away, so people keep it around because they don't want to do that, but they also don't want to recycle it because to get old desktops recycled, the owner of the original hardware actually has to foot the bill for that more often than not, so often that stuff's just chucked in a garage or something and people aren't using it. So if you go around and ask people, usually be pretty willing to get rid of it if you have some use for it. You can also go to local businesses and just ask what they're doing with old computers or when they're having a clean out or something, because often old businesses will put all the old hardware in a storage room or something and then just get rid of it all at one time in bulk. So just go and ask about that, or ask if you can talk to the IT department. And I mean, the worst that can happen in that case is they just tell you to fuck off. Not much to lose really, just sort of gotta go do it, and you might be able to get some good stuff out of it. So another way, and this is always also a good way just to learn stuff, especially if you're only sort of starting out in the sort of PC hacker nerdy community, is volunteering to work in the IT department for non-for-profits and local government and stuff like that. I did something similar in high school and I got a lot of cool stuff doing that, like when they were getting rid of old stuff and just other hardware, power bricks and stuff like that. So it's always nice to have that sort of stuff around for any interesting or unique hardware you might find that might be missing parts. Just keep your eyes out, always look around. You can usually find some pretty cool stuff, and just get out there and get yourself some hardware to play around with. During your sourcing of hardware, you're going to come across a lot of Pentium 4s like what I'm using in my video. You're also going to come across a lot of Quarto Duos at the same time. minimum spec is a Pentium 4 with SATA connections. If it doesn't have SATA, if it's using old IDE hard drives and there's no SATA connections on the motherboard, then you're getting a little bit too old. That's going to make it hard to get any decent hard drives in that phone, which for the purpose of a file server and media server isn't exactly ideal. You also come across, like I was saying, Core 2 Duos, which will give you better performance and just have more chance of working as well. So that's kind of the recommended. The Pentium 4 is the min spec and the Core 2 Duo is the recommended spec. But you'll probably want around 2 to 4 gigabytes of RAM, which should be pretty easy to get as well. So in terms of hard drives, you might have an external one laying around you can use or something. But if not, then a lot of the Core 2 Duos, at least the ones that I had, the hard drives they came with were 250 gigabytes. If you get a couple of those, like 2 or 3 of those, and you're 500 to 750 gigabytes. Now that you've got yourself some hardware, you're going to want to prep it for the installation of the operating system. Some things you'll need is definitely some new thermal paste and some isopropyl alcohol. Helps to get rid of any old thermal paste. So one of the things to do once you get your hardware is just to plug them in and see if any of them just boot up straight away. So best case scenario is one of your systems does, and the easiest thing to do then is just to clean out the dust, reapply thermal paste, and it should be all ready to go. But in case none of them do turn on, then you're going to want to do some diagnosing to figure out what the problem is with each one. So easiest things to figure out when you're initially doing all of this is if you get a lot of beeping when you first go to turn one on, it'll usually be a memory error. So if you get one of those, probably just try swapping out for some new memory. But if that doesn't work, then try searching online for some beep codes, figure out what the exact problem is. But what you're going to want to do is just slowly sort of swap around parts until you sort of Frankenstein yourself a working computer. I'm not going to explain in depth about any of the diagnostics. Already plenty of tutorials out there on how to do that. There are people a lot smarter than me making a lot better content on the specifics of this stuff. Alright, once you've got it all cleaned up and ready to go, then it's on to the operating system installation. Now that we have the PC cleaned out and ready to go, we just need to grab some software. So we're going to start with Debian, which is the operating system we're going to be running. So you just want to come to the website. There's the URL, and you can jump to CD USB ISO image, and download CD DVD, and then here you have a choice between CD or DVD. The main difference is the packages they have. The CD image is a lot smaller, so I'm just going to download the CD image just because it's enough to get started with. If you have a quicker internet connection, maybe just go DVD. But if you have a slow one, then definitely CD will be easier for you to download. Okay, so you just click on that and it brings you to this page. So you just want to come to the bottom here and select. Okay, then you want to select the Debian 9.30 AMD64 blah blah blah, you get the point. Alright, now that that's downloading, the next thing we'll need is something to write the ISO to a USB. So for this we're going to use Rufus. There are other tools out there. I'm pretty sure this one is Windows only, which I'm sure most of you watching this video will most likely be running. So I don't know, if you're already running Linux, then you should be able to figure out how to do this yourself. Yeah, I find Rufus though is the best. Some of the other tools just never seem to work, at least for me. We're just gonna come down here and then we'll install the latest version. Okay, so then you just launch it and this is basically it. So once Debian's downloaded, we can get into what we do here. Now we won't worry. And then the other thing you'll want to get is Putty. So once we have the operating system installed, that's how we're going to configure the software. for it. So we're going to be SSHing into the server from our PC here. So just go ahead and grab that. There are other tools, other ways to do that on Windows that I think are better. Primarily I'm just talking about the Linux subsystem for Windows. Yeah, on Windows just for now we'll start with Putty, and I'll be talking about Windows subsystem for Linux in a later video. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, make sure you subscribe and like. Shameless self-promotion. Obviously, once Debian's installed, you'll need a USB to install it on. Get yourself a USB. 4 gig should be fine if you're using the CD version, but all of my installation USBs are 8 gigabytes, so just use whatever you have. Just make sure you pull all of your data off it, because obviously we're going to be overriding all of that if there is any on there. So just make sure you have a backup of that if you have any important files on there or anything. Now that we've got a USB plugged in and ready, we can launch Rufus. Okay, so when you launch it, obviously you're going to have your device up here at the top, so just make sure the right one's selected. So the only USB device I've selected is this 8 gigabyte one I was using to flash my BIOS. So I don't need that anymore, so I'm just going to replace that, and then we're going to leave it as MBR partition scheme for BIOS or UEFI. And then we're just going to leave it as FAT32. This doesn't matter too much. It's not going to influence the file system that's used once you install the operating system, because I don't think you can even install Linux on FAT32. And FAT32 or NTFS causes a lot of problems trying to use it on Linux, trying to do anything in regards to user permissions. And you just click here, and then you select your the operating system you downloaded that you want to put on this USB drive. Then that usually changes the label name as well, so that's fine there. So then you just hit start. Okay, so this pop-up is just saying that it requires some files. Agree to that. You might not have this problem, it depends, but yeah, just read and use common sense. I'm sure you can figure it out. Okay, yeah, so you just want to select ISO. I've never used DD before, so I'm not too sure what it is or how it works, but I've never had a problem with ISO, so carry on with that. And then this is just a warning to say that all of the data will be destroyed, which is fine. Okay, cool, that seems ready. So once it's done, it'll say ready down here. So you just exit out, that's all you need to do. So if we check the USB drive, bunch of files, woo! They don't mean much, but that's fine. The computer will translate all of this for us. Aren't they just amazing, these devices? Okay, now let's switch over to the real world so I can plug this USB into the desktop and start making it into a server. Because the software is what makes this thing a server. Next time on Building a Server for Free. Shit. I think I just heard a pop. What the hell is going on here? Nani the fuck? I have no idea what I'm looking at right now. Yeah, make sure you subscribe and like it. Shameless self-promotion.